Hi everyone, how are you? I want to start by saying I hope you are all safe and healthy because in times like this, we really realize who is important, what is important, and how we deal with stress and how we deal with the inevitability, like how how we're going to handle inevitabilities in life. We're starting to hopefully come to grips with that. Personally, I deal with a lot of my issues through art, but music more than any, like more specifically music. I play guitar and bass, I write. It's really a passion of mine. And it helps me deal with a lot of stress, a lot of issues, a lot of cultural issues, a lot everything. I'm sure everyone relates. Everyone loves music, hopefully. Um, and as far as we are concerned as humans, uh, it's as old as life itself. It's such a natural form of expression. Just the other day, my 4-year-old brother sang a song, one of his favorite gospel songs, and I asked him, I said, Aiden, uh, why do you remember that song? I asked, and he said, he said, it's happy. It makes me happy. Music and emotion are synonymous, and really not just music, all art forms. Um, each and every art form. Aiden may just be 4 years old, but there are many children who begin music lessons around the same time, around the age of 4, 3, and it's something we as humans have been enjoying for thousands of years. Um, while on a dig in Libya, Africa, some archaeologists found two whistles they believe to be close to 100,000 years old. That's pretty monumental. That's such an old artifact. Another amazing find was a flute made by the Neanderthals. It was carved out of this bare like leg bone and had four notes, like four holes on the top of the leg bone. And that was around 30,000 years ago. They found that, and that's definitely a flute. That's a pretty sophisticated flute for a 30,000-year-old caveman. So that's pretty cool. As far as the oldest existing song goes, most historians point to, I'm going to butcher this name. It's called the Hurrian hymn. It's spelled Hurrian, Hurrian, I believe. The Hurrians, they wrote that in cuneiform. It's an ancient writing style a lot of Middle Eastern cultures used to use for thousands of years. And the Hurrians, or is now present day Syria, they wrote that song around 14th century BC. And you can actually Google it and YouTube it and listen to it. I just did the other day, and it sounded like very Eastern vibe, like how people imagine like feng shui music to sound like, very peaceful, serene. They played it on this string instrument called the lyre, Lyre, and I kind of want to see someone play it. That would be pretty cool. Or maybe I can learn how to play it. The first written notation of music was in 4000 BC in modern day Syria, Iraq. The civilization was Sumer in Mesopotamia. It was written as a tribute to their ruler. So a lot of old songs and dances were really as rituals or like rites of passage for men and I'm sure women as well, but they don't document it. And this was no different. It was for their king at the time that he was possibly beloved. In addition, the addition of metal instruments made of either copper or bronze completed the range of available classical civilizations. They had percussion. If they had copper and bronze, they were able to make bells or things of that nature, and really widen their variety of music capabilities. And the first trumpet was made apparently in China in 16th century BC. Egypt and Israel, they had cymbals about 1,000 and a half years before Christ, 1,500 BC, 1,000 BC. So a lot of civilizations, not Siri, a lot of civilizations already had these instruments scoped out. They already had pretty much our modern day instruments as far as percussion and I guess wind instruments are concerned. That's very ancient. Our word for music is it derives from the Greeks. It translates to the art of the muses. Uh, the language indicates the role of music in ancient Greek life. Very alluring, seductive type of music, or it's for like rituals, but I'm assuming at that age it was more for parties and things of that nature, as well as their poetry, their drama. A lot of the stuff was in a day's worth of an event, and music was no different. They actually came up with the first lyrics because lyrics is actually poetry recited over music and with drama performed as well. And that's where the term lyrics first was coined in Greece, which is really cool. I didn't know that until I wrote this, until I did the information. Cool stuff. The Greeks also were pivotal in music theory, the modern day written music, as far as like modes go, which is like different things that instrumentalists learn to solo and to know where they're going for the next part of the song, as well as what key they're in. They use these methods to understand the language of music that the Greeks helped found, either or. They also created the Pythagorean theorem. They also created the octave relationship, like the octave system, because there's 7 letters that music uses, A through G, and as soon as you pass G, you go to A again, and as soon as you hit that A, that's the next octave, and they developed that technique. As a result of a few fragments of Greek music, the earliest examples to survive were 2 hymns to Apollo. They carved them in marble in the 2nd century BC. That's so freaking cool. The first organ was created in the 3rd century BC in Greece, but some records show that it was actually in the 8th century BC, but it's in Greece regardless. And the revolution of the keyboard began then, because everything in modern music is around a piano and drums and some sort of strings like bass and guitar, but piano was just the ruler of the world for centuries, especially in the Western world, for Baroque music, for opera, for classical music. It was huge. And that goes into the next chapter of written music, which was in the medieval Christian church era, around 500 to 600 AD. The first, I guess, post-Greek written music was found. It was in England. They wrote it for their pope or monarch, Gregory the First. It was actually directly, this is interesting, directly from the chants that the Jewish synagogues used to use in the early years of Christianity. They actually wrote down musical notes to instruct Jewish people how to chant and how to, like, which notes to hit when they were making music as Christians. And it's really funny that, full circle, sorry, the Jewish signs, and they reminded us, they reminded the worshipers how the chants should go, and the medieval church adopted those symbols and influenced the musical charts of that chant in the Christian church around the 500 to 600 AD. But that's the boring stuff. But moving forward from that, the next form of music's advancement to our knowledge is the organ on top of the classical kind of choirs. And that type of music was called polyphony. It was like the creation of opera. They had organs and a choir singing and playing at the same time, which made this like wide range of sound. And I swear I looked up these organs. They were like, some of them could be 30, 40 feet tall in certain parts of Europe. It was just ridiculous, and they're all wind. Strings weren't really introduced until later. I believe it was 1397. In 1397, that's the first time they actually put strings with the keyboard. So everything was organ based, and it just looks amazing. I encourage someone to Google what's the instrument called? Well, a 16th century organ. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's amazing. The harpsichord. That was the first modern piano, the harpsichord in 1397. It's the first keyboard that had strings on it. I wrote in my notes to tell you to seriously Google a 16th century organ. But by the 18th, from 1397 to the 18th century, the Western world was ruled by the piano at that point. It was so much more compatible. It can go inside the home. Before, they're only seen in churches. You can only hear that music pretty much in churches. All the best musicians went to the churches. Now you can play your favorite songs inside your own home from about the years 1500 to about now. So it's pretty cool. I don't have time for this little side story, but I thought it was pretty funny. In the 16th century, there was these guys called the castrati. The castrati, they were these opera singers in Italy, and they literally castrated themselves to become rich. Like, they were grown men singing in high-pitched voices because they were castrated, and that was like very favorable throughout Italy, and they just were given fortunes and things. That's not really relevant, but I thought that was just a funny thing to add into the history of music, because you got Justin Bieber running around here kind of doing the same thing, which is pretty cool. And all right, so most of the millennium was opera, and then the 18th century witnessed the rise of two of Baroque's biggest musical stars. They're both German, Handel and Johann Sebastian Bach. They both became pioneers of what is now known as classical music. And then Mozart set the world on fire, and everyone gave up trying altogether, pretty much, because he's known as like the greatest classical musician. But Baroque music derived out of that opera phase and polyphony phase. It was more of the Renaissance music that you hear now. Everyone dressed in that attire. They listened to Baroque music, Bach, Handel, a lot of Italian and Spanish and Portuguese composers as well. And it was a true Renaissance time. And now there was really nothing more to add besides the history of recorded music, because written music might have paved the way, but but actually putting recorded music into human history is needed. Recorded everything. It changed more than music. You have microphones now for acting, for movies, for communication between military, for every facet of life. You talk on the phone, you use that microphone. Thomas Edison created that in 1887, the phonograph, and it just pretty much changed the world. And he actually started it with cylinders, and he had these two needles on a tinfoil cylinder, and one needle was for the playback and the other one was for recording. And the first thing he recorded was Mary Had a Little Lamb. So that was the first recording ever, was Mary Had a Little Lamb. And you can actually see that on YouTube too. Like, all this stuff is all accessible, and I honestly didn't know it. And I love music, and I should have known most of this stuff my entire life, so none of this is really common knowledge, and I thought that was pretty fascinating to know. And then in the 1890s, this guy, Emil, or girl, I actually didn't see if it was a guy or girl yet, so don't quote me on that. Emil Berliner, she created these discs to replace the cylinders, and it became an arms race at that point. The 30s saw tape recordings emerge in the 30s, and then wire and vinyl recordings emerged in the 50s. Cassette tapes took over the 70s, and the 80s pretty much brought in this new technological age with Jobs and Bill Gates and guys of that nature, moving things towards CD-ROMs and computers, and now we're just so far past that, so far beyond that. It's amazing. I just airdropped my friend a whole project the other day, and it was instant. So now we're in an age where it's really boundless, and I don't know. I feel as if it's important to know where you come from to fully understand where you are now, and that's what I have done in this past project. I totally appreciate where music is now. I totally appreciate where technology is now, and appreciate where it's going, and it's awesome. So thank you. Be safe. Have a great night. Bye.